Hello everyone and welcome back to Let's Play Pandemonium 2. It's finally time to take on the bitter end. And I'm not looking forward to it at all. Because, well, one thing, this level has a map. Yeah. The map really isn't really helpful. It just kind of shows off like the general layout of the level, but not the scope and the size of it. So, the level description. In the deepest part of the comet's core, the heroes must navigate a labyrinthine, nightmarish, booby-trapped factory of sorts to find a way out and reach the heart of the core. Now, you may not have noticed, and if you didn't notice, you really have to pay attention, but this level is long. I'm doing all my commentary in post here because I'm not going to be talking for the amount of time that this level took. If you haven't noticed, this level, this video is a little under an hour long, so yeah, I wasn't going to try and talk and actually focus on what I was actually going to talk about while doing the level at the same time, so yeah, post it is. Actually, one thing I forgot to mention about the lightning jab was that they really put a lot of detail into the lightning jab. It really depends on the enemy, but if you fire your first shot in order to make that actually make that bridge connect so that you just keep mashing and it'll do damage, if the enemy actually has a way to defend himself, like for one example is the wizard goons, because they have their own magic, you'll actually get into a bit of a standoff with magic, so that you'll actually have to be pressing your square button more and more and more until it actually reaches the end of the it reaches the enemy, which is a weird attention to detail that I kind of enjoy. Now enjoy as we go down the giant shaft that was part of the map. This level, I might as well get the level description out of the way, or my overall summary of the level out of the way. This level is large, and that has something good for it, and in my opinion, it's the only thing that's going against it is the size of the level. However, the size of the level also is sort of good, it's mixed. The way I think about it is that this is the final level. This is the penultimate level. And there's also these guys walking around. Surprisingly, the only enemies in this level are called snow crawlers. This level is very devoid of enemies, which is rather surprising in my opinion. You think a level this huge would have a lot more enemies, but they don't. There is going to be another enemy that we're going to be meeting later on, but it's very specific. Now anyway, back to my overall take on the level. It's huge, but overall I think it's supposed to be huge. This is the final level before the final boss. I'm just going to put them right out there. And really, if anything, a lot of people would argue that the final level or the final boss should be some sort of like a final test of your skills, a final exam, if you will. And really, this level does just that. The only problem is that they had to make the level is huge. But really, you're using every single one of your supposed skills that you have brought and you've developed throughout the entire game, and they've thrown them all into this level. There's even going to be one portion that we're actually going to be seeing something new, which I really don't know how to respond to seeing something like that being new. This level is also really, really trippy, but not in the way that Lick the Toad was. But anyway, the structure of this level. This level constitutes a lot of backtracking. This is a giant web of trying to find your way through some specific doors. The first objective is trying to find the 2 switches that open the 1 door that you just saw. That's, I think, like a third of the level, and we're already 5 minutes in. Like, this is an hour long. We're already 5 minutes in, and really, in terms of the average length of Pandemonium levels, which are between 10 and 15 minutes when you're even trying to get all the treasure, and maybe like 4 to 8 minutes when you're just trying to rush through it. Even with those numbers, I'm like ballparking. I'm just ballparking right here, but with those numbers, this level alone is 3 to 4 times larger than when you're trying to find all the treasure, and just like indescribably huge if you're trying to rush through it. I think if you're even trying to rush through it, you're still going to be taking 40 minutes because of how structured this level is. But again, I like it. It's weird that I like it. Also, this is another level, like, and because of how big this level is, in terms of getting treasure, they just throw it at your feet. Really, even if you're rushing, there should be no excuse not to get, for you not getting like at least 80% of the treasure. Like if you're going out of your way in order to find all the treasure, you're just going to be well over the 100% mark into like 3/4 of the level, and there's still tons of treasure to go. But this really feels like a final exam. It feels complete. However, it's just like, in terms of the level as it progresses, it also has minute details. I want you to point those out for yourself. Like, we haven't seen them at all, but as we continue on, the level gets harder. In terms of this, in particular, this shaft, which will have to be going up and down, multiple times, because we have to revisit rooms in order to find new places to go, and new switches to push. So that's fun. Now anyway, while we're here, and we have 50 minutes left to go, this is probably a good time to sum up my thoughts about this game. In terms of it being a sequel, and also continuation. Because I've got a lot of thoughts in my head that I just need to dump out and get them over with. I'm not even going to dump all of them because we still have one more level to go after this. So you're just going to be hearing about the most of it. All right, that's what I forgot to mention. In terms of this level, like, while recording this, I had to pretty much listen to the music of this, and I wouldn't even classify this level having music. More ambient sound effects than anything. Sound effects, noise, whatever you want to call it. It really sounds more like noise because it's just like the inner workings of a factory in the heart of the core. Yeah, we still can't get through this door even though there's holes. Nikki may be an acrobat, but whatever. But yeah, like, imagine listening to this for about 50... listening to this just noise and just really... what's going on. But anyway, might as well start going through my gigantic list of comparing the first game and the second. We're going to be talking about the series here. First off, I might as well start with Nikki and Fargus as actual characters. Let's start with Nikki. I discussed what, like, the changes... Well, I briefly discussed what the changes that Nikki has had in her character in terms of, like, the manual. The manual pretty much just says that she pretty much has just abandoned being a good girl. And she's abandoned being a good girl and has just tried to get as many shortcuts as she could in order to become the ultimate sorceress. And in terms of her appearance, too, compared to the first game and the second game, she really has pulled the biggest 180 I have ever seen she's almost unrecognizable as a character. Or at least the character I remember from Pandemonium 1. And I love Pandemonium 1. I love the characters in Pandemonium 1. They were grounded. They were realistic, maybe? Like, if you're remembering the first Pandemonium, that Nikki really was looking for excitement in her life. She escaped from the circus, which is a complete opposite. That shows how mundane her life felt. In this one, she's just like, yeah, I just have a gigantic lust for power. And I'm going like, where did this come from? Like, yes, you wanted to train to be a sorceress, and yes, you have an aversion to hard work. And how did your hair change from blonde to red? I have no idea. But, yeah, in terms of Nikki, I'm just going like, what happened? I really don't have any closure for Nikki either. Like, I'm going... I really liked when she was just kind of like a bumbling person who was realistic and you could relate to. Like, everybody likes taking shortcuts in life. Like, she had that value going for her. But yeah, in this one, she's just like, yeah, I'm just gonna stab everybody who gets in my way. Because I apparently love Tina Turner, and I have the nickname of being the Red Death. So yeah, that's the case of Nikki. She definitely changed. In a lot of other people's cases, that Nikki has changed for the hotter, but I'm not even going to get into that. The second thing, so let's move on to Fargus as a character. Fargus, the manual does say about his regular change, but it's going like, it kind of comes right out of the blue that apparently he's just fall into a seat of psychoses. Or psychosis. Yeah, it's only singular, it's not plural. But Fargus, if you remember from the first game, was just like a regular jester. He was a guy to make jokes. When I kind of think about it, he's just kind of there. Like, he kind of wants to just like be more than a jester, I guess. He wants to throw some magic into his act. I'm really trying to remember myself. But in terms, like, Nikki has a lot more characterization than Fargus does, in my opinion. There's not a lot of values that he could have, and especially in this game, whoa, okay, that happened. A lot of the animation in this level is very janky. There's going to be a lot of places where the monkey bar animation is just going to go, and except you're walking, so yeah, things like that happen. I'm not going to talk about the level. Like, the level is doing the work for me, really, because there's tons of stuff that goes on, but it's fairly straightforward. Each is a challenge. But anyway, Fargus. Fargus himself really didn't have much of a character to go on. Most of the character went to Sid, which we'll talk about next. But in terms of that, really, Fargus was a jester, a pretty bogus jester at that. He was not really great at all. And in terms of being like, he was just kind of the comic relief. I'm assuming like he was just the comic relief. But really, what can you really expect from Fargus? He was just kind of there. But however, the change that was with Fargus in terms of the his character, really, I don't really know what to say about it. Like, he didn't really have much of a character to go with, but they didn't really give him a character that really developed. It's really odd. It's really odd, and I don't know what to think about it. Like, Other than apparently he just kind of just lost it. Lost what? I'm going... He didn't lose much. He was... Really, and... Yeah, you really gotta move in the last section or you're just gonna be screwed. Yeah. But yeah, in terms of this game, he's just kind of like... Yeah, we're not gonna give him an actual full character like Nikki had. I'm really trying to think of things for Fargus. In terms of Fargus, he really didn't do anything for me. But they just kind of just went with what little they had. They just... I don't want to say that he kind of gave up in terms of his character, but when I'm thinking of it, it's like, really did, they kind of did, didn't they? Now, in terms of gameplay, Nikki's pretty much the same as ever. But Fargus, on the other hand, if you remember from Pandemonium 1, I barely used him. I probably only showed him off once, and really the only reason you would have used Fargus in the first Pandemonium was because it posed a challenge. He didn't have the double jump. That was what he didn't have. Now, however, Fargus in Nikki in this game is pretty much works the same way. They really didn't have to change anything, and they really didn't. However, they improved Fargus a lot more. They actually, in terms of actually, overall, they made him more useful. In the first game, you really couldn't use Sid, and in this one, you had a reason to use Sid. The first couple levels, you actually showed that you could actually get the level done and finished with Fargus in terms of 100% completion. I showed that off myself. Is he superior to Nikki? Absolutely not, because he doesn't have a double jump. But Fargus certainly has stepped up. This guy's really annoying. Now, I mentioned Sid. Sid's character is a bit harder to describe. It's kind of an annoyance to actually think about it. Because there's not a lot to go on. And now for the new addition to this level. What is apparently called the jet boots. These... Well, you pretty much see what the jet boots do. They pretty much do a gigantic amount of leap to your jump. They give a lot of extra height. Which makes these jumps that you're seeing here pretty easy. Pretty simple. But anyway, Sid's character. You could argue that Sid didn't really have a character of his own in the first game. He wasn't really anything in the first game. He was Sid's puppet, or Fargus's puppet that he had in his hand. Now, like, was he a ventriloquist puppet? Like, did he have his own kind of agenda? Did he have his own mind? That was left up to debate. Pandemonium 2, on the other hand, definitely attempted to give him more of his own unique personality. The manual tries to play up that Sid is his own character, and that he has his own mind. Like, it says he's reportedly the lost soul of an ancient warrior, but they kind of play down that he has his own mind because of... They use the metaphor of a shoe, S-O-L-E, that he was, like, the bottom of a shoe. But he gets his tongue... He gets his tongue... It's a really bad metaphor. I really don't enjoy it because it's just so tacky. But the intro does the most amount of work in terms of giving Sid an actual character. Because he narrates at the beginning, but when the three of them are looking at the comet by the end of the intro, Sid has his own motivations. Apart from Fargus. Like, maybe you could argue that really Fargus is just kind of just playing up being an absolute dip. And Sid is supposed to be his actual intelligible speaking mind. But it doesn't seem to be that way, because in a lot of ways, like, Sid's motivation is to get away from Fargus, because Fargus is holding him down. And get closer to Nikki, but I'm not even going to discuss that, because there's absolutely nothing to discuss. At least in my mind. Even then, I'm not going to discuss it, because... a girl and her puppet! Okay. So yeah, Sid's character is up in the air. Like, is it there? Is it not there? There's really nothing concrete. I don't think. There's a lot of evidence for Sid to actually have a character. But is it there? I'm not entirely sure. Because it could be there and it could not be there. Now, the characterization of all three of them, in terms of being a team. The first game actually pulled the idea that... really pulled a good idea. What I'm getting at is... like, the team... like, if you remember the intro of Pandemonium 1, if you haven't played Pandemonium 1, play it. Or watch my LP. Please, watch my LP. Plug myself. Why not? But the idea... like, the intro was that like, they were trying to cut corners, and it backfired on them. They summoned a gigantic demon who was ravaging their town and was eating it. And they had to go, and it's like, oh crap, we're responsible, we have to go fix this. So they knew that they were in the wrong. In terms of that, they were never really considered heroes. But they did fix their own problems. They didn't leave it to somebody else. Like, they were capable of doing so. They reached the wishing engine in the end, and they were pretty much golden, except for what happened at the end, because, you know, Fargus and everything. However, so Nikki and Fargus were never really considered heroes. However, in the second game, the whole idea of them being, like, very in the middle about being heroes is completely put out the window in terms of the manual story. Because Zorsha's motivations in the story are supposed to be bringing, like, happiness to the world. I don't know if you caught that when I narrated that a couple of episodes ago, but Zorsha wants to bring peace and happiness to the world. Why are Nikki and Fargus trying to stop that? Really? Like, it's weird, because I keep repeating myself. But when did Nikki and Fargus turn from that gray area into becoming villains? Because you could really see that they could be becoming villains. Then again, you can only, like, take Zorsha's motivation, like, Zorsha's word for it. It's like, I'm bringing peace and happiness by controlling the entire universe. Nobody should control the entire universe. That's ridiculous. So, of course, Nikki and Fargus have to stop them, but when you're really looking at it simply, like, a very simple understanding, Nikki and Fargus are villains. Because they're trying to stop happiness from coming to the world. Then again, it's coming from the Goon Queen, but really, we didn't know anything about the Goon Queen before. She wasn't in the first game. She just kind of showed up to be, you know, the bad guy. It's kind of a thing. it's a weird thing that I'm thinking of. Like, are they villains? Are they not? It's another. It's like a gray area on top of a gray area. I don't know. They're just Nikki and Fargus are just weird people who have no sense of value, who have no sense of actual idea. That looked like a platform, okay? Now, I'm gonna stop talking about the story, because the story is really where I'm kind of going, like, is this a good or bad game or not? However, in terms of the gameplay itself between the first two games, Pandemonium 2 does improve upon what was already a very strong platforming style. Like, everything moves pretty well. However, there could be some things that could be said about the second game, but I'm going to talk about the improvements before I talk about what I think is bad. What I do think is good is the addition of grabbing ledges. There's a couple of times in the first Pandemonium game where you think you make a jump. However, you just hit the wall of the ledge, and you fall down to your death. In this game, it doesn't happen. You grab ledges. It's great. It's a great use. In terms of that, they don't really mess with the formula too much, except for specific levels. And that's what I kind of consider being a bad thing, is that they play with the formula. Yes, they're trying to break the borders of what they're able to do. And I can't blame them for that. I just kind of think that some of those areas could have been better. Like let's just talk about two examples, Hate Tank and Kaleidoscope, which was the use of the robot and the use of the tank. I should have done that oppositely, but whatever. The tank was a bold new addition. It was to show off, like, the industrialness of the level, and really it was just like, hey, let's try and do something other than platforming. Now, in terms of Pandemonium, like, platforming is what it was good at, and, well, the tank kind of controlled well. It turned on a dime, but it was weird. This vine is also weird because it has momentum at the top when I don't think it should. Woo! In my personal opinion, I just don't like the tank because I think it's messing around with the formula in a way that it shouldn't have been messed with. The robot, on the other hand, was something that was alright. There was some things I don't agree with, like the bounciness of the robot in terms of hitting the walls. It really feels weird. And now we're done with that door, thank goodness. Now we have to move on to other doors that we have to get through. But the robot could be considered, like, I consider the robot better than the tank in overall, because the robot just kind of, like, the tank is a tank, and you really can't do anything in terms of being, like, tank platforming. Like, honestly, I'm kind of interested in what tank platforming could be. But then, like, the robot is like a bigger version of a regular person, so the platforming was still apparent. It was a bit weird, and you were able to fire missiles and invincibility shields, but it was still kind of alright. And it was broken up by falling sections, and bouncing, and, like, I didn't really have as much qualms with it as I did with the tank. So, the second thing that could be argued is that the game is not as polished or as sharp as the first game. I think I argued about this back in the third level. in terms of that, I'm still a bit mixed about that, because I'm looking at a level like this, and the amount of detail they put into multiple things that are going on, and there's still plenty of level left to go. We're only halfway through. Really, I've been talking for half an hour. My God. But you got this idea. Like, look at this shaft. It's gigantic, and it feels large. And there's going to be rooms that we still have to go into that, holy crap, they dumped effects on. And now here is another enemy that we have to deal with. I actually don't have a name for this guy. He's really just like the eye on the wall. But he is a real danger, because he just rapid fires shots at you that you... As long as you keep moving and don't get in the way of his shooting, you should be able to get out of the way. He only appears in that room too, so you shouldn't have any problem overall. So anyway, back to what I was saying. This is still felt like a Pandemonium game. Absolutely. Everything is pretty much still in place. However, now I'm going to get into the bulk of what I liked about the first game and the second game. And as I thought about this more on my own time, my thoughts kind of shifted. I really praise the continuity and continuation of things in the first game, when really the second game does a lot of good things. Now, before I talk about that, let's deal with this mini-boss. This mini-boss is called the Deadeye. The Deadeye is he can be surprisingly annoying if you have no idea how to deal with him. And really, I'm just kind of going like I've been playing this for half an hour and really wasn't alert when I was playing this at the first couple of times. So dealing with this guy is really not that difficult. You have a Phoenix Fireball ready for you over here, so you're never faulting for firepower because you need it. He's always going to be shooting projectiles at you, and you have to shoot him in his big pupil. However, every time you hit him in his pupil, he just unleashes a spray of projectiles everywhere. So you gotta be aware of when that's gonna happen. I usually take way too many hits. But anyway, he's down. Anyway, continuity. The continuity of the levels. It can be argued that the levels in this game really don't make a lot of sense because we're in space. We're in a comet, we're in uncharted territory, and they're trying to make sense out of uncharted territory. That's kind of one of my problems with the second game compared to the first game. We're learning about the world of Lear in the first game, and it's kind of... what's the word? Like, there's an idea behind it. There's learning, and I don't know why that effect is just kind of really awesome. It's just like everything's breaking apart as we're inside this place. It's really cool as we're going through. But does the second game really need to try and be better than the first game in terms of its continuity? I really don't have an answer for that. But let's try and go through let's just try and go through a couple of places, a couple of moments in both of the games to really try and understand where I'm coming from in terms of continuity between the games. Let's start with the transitions between areas in both of the games. Let's start with the first game. The first game had pretty much the beginning, which went from the beginning, Skull Fortress, all the way to the Shroom Lord, the first boss. Now, when you fight the Shroom like, really, when you fight the Shroom Lord, the transition after, like, the transition leading up to... I love those polygons for some reason. Or the pixels. The pixels. There's pixels everywhere. And with that switch, we can now continue onward past all of this into the final area of the level. However, getting there is probably going to be the longest trek we're ever going to do, because we're at extreme ends of the level right now. But anyway, after you defeat the Shroom Lord, you're in the acid pools, you're pretty much underground. But then right after you defeat the Shroom Lord, you're just kind of, like, kicked out on your butt out of a cave entrance, which has double doors, right into a desert. Like, they really didn't... It's almost like they tried to shoehorn the desert level in after the underground levels, just because they didn't know where to put them. So there wasn't really a good transition in terms of that area. However, after Goon Honch, then you fought all the way through the forest and through Goon Honcho's territory to fight Goon Honcho himself. The transition between... That is a weird... That was a weird sound. The weird, like, grinding and squeaking. That's why I kind of spend a lot of time, like, going, like, I want to hear that sound again. It's weird. But anyway, Goon Honcho. He was between, the foresty area and the, finally going up into the sky. The transition with there was kind of alright. Because, the manual description also helped out with that idea. Because, really, you were trying to get to the sky, and therefore you hijacked Honcho's airship. And that was the next level. You just being on Honcho's airship, and you going off into the sky, being shot out of a cannon, and there you go. It's good, but not really strong, because all of a sudden, and that is a creepy looking thing. This is what happens when you're, like, slowly progressing through this area, because as you're progressing, you're just really going, like, what the hell? That didn't do that before. Why is it a whippy thing? So the transition between Goon Honcho wasn't really that bad, but it could have been better, I think. Because you're just kind of on Honcho's airship, and where you start, you're kind of more of a stowaway than actually a pilot. But anyway, I'm just kind of, like, speculating here, so I'm gonna move on. So there were really, in terms of that, there were only 2 transition areas in the first game. The second game, however, had 3 transitions, because it had 3 bosses. Or Pandemonium 1 had 3 bosses, so it had 2 transitions between Boss 1 and Boss 2, and the final boss was Boss 3. But Pandemonium 2 has 4 bosses, so it has 3 transitions. So if you remember back to Hot Pants, Hot Pants' transition was you got into a rocket, hijacked it, flew off, and right at the beginning of the next level, you're still flying your rocket. And then you crash. That's all I'm asking for in terms of transition. Like, already off the bat, Pandemonium 2, I think, has better transitions than Pandemonium 1 did. It shows that, really, this game worked on what Pandemonium 1 already had and improved it. Of course, I am extremely nuts about Pandemonium. I've really been realizing this over the past couple of weeks. I'm going like, wow, I really need to stop playing Pandemonium for like a couple more years and just gotta go like, I really need to enjoy the game and not think about this too much. What am I doing? But anyway, so there was the transition with Hot Pants. A rocket, and then continue on with Stan the Man, and you're still flying your rocket. You crash it, but it's a good transition. then there was, after that really awesome transition, then everything kind of, well, not really stumbles, but it just kind of falls apart. Because Egg had no transition. Like, Egg is my least favorite boss, pretty much because, well, that was really bad. I was doing well. I was doing well having 1 hit point for a majority of the time. But Egg I hate with passion, because, like, in terms of my critical thinking here, and in terms of gameplay, like, he's just a really cruddy boss. But Egg is just like, you go through the Temple of Nori, and then all of a sudden you're here. There's... what's going on? Why is the king here? I can't find any concrete thing, like... And when you drop the ball as hard as you do after a great transition between, like, you getting a rocket, that's not good. Then there's Mr. Shinobolin. The transition isn't with Mr. Shinobolin, though. It is with the next level, Kaleidoscope. And I already said this before when I did that level, that I love Kaleidoscope for its transition, for its simply being a transition level alone. It was great. It served as you were on a tank and you were getting driven to the core, because really it would have been bad if it would have been bad if this game did not have the Kaleidoscope, because if you just fought Mr. Shinobolin and you just drove away on a tank and then all of a sudden you were on the Zol train level, it wouldn't have made sense. But then Kaleidoscope comes in, and everything kind of makes more sense, that how you're drilling deeper and deeper into the core, and then finally you get to the Zol train, and it's great, and it's awesome, and I love it so much. So, in terms of when I'm thinking of the transitions between the first game and the second game kind of wins out. 2 out of 3 is not bad compared to Goon Honcho alone being the good transition of the first game. Now, that's what happens with the transition between the areas. Now let's talk about the bosses. I'm not going to talk about the levels, because the levels do enough on their own to be what they are. And I've kind of talked about the levels already in, like, their own video, so I'm not going to redo them. I'm not going to talk about them again. But I am going to talk about the bosses, the build-up that the boss has, and pretty much what you're expecting when you're getting ready to fight those bosses. So let's start with the first game. First game is the Shroom Lord. First boss is the Shroom Lord. You're going through, you're in the underground, you go to Lost Caves, and the first inkling of a boss coming up is the Fungus Grotto. You're underground and it's dark and it's murky and bleh. And then you get to the acid pools, and then you get to the Shroom Lord. Again, Shroom Lord doesn't really have that much of a ability to be, like, it didn't really have much of a build-up in terms of itself. It served as more of a guardian in order to get out of the underground. There was build-up in terms of the levels that you were going through, that it was like, okay, you're gonna face something that's underground. Sure. But there wasn't any build-up in terms of, like, you were going to meet him, like, itself. Like, you were going to fight something, but you didn't know whether it was the Shroom Lord or not. So, again, the Shroom Lord, kind of weak. However, Goon Honcho is far stronger, because the manual helps out with that a great deal. You're going through the Goon outposts, you're going through his home, his territory, because it says so in the manual, that it mentions him by name. So, you know you're gonna meet him at some point. So, there we go, miles ahead of what the Shroom Lord is able to do. Now, I might as well talk about... I'm gonna try and talk about the final boss as much as I can of, like, the final boss of the first game without spoiling it if you haven't played it. So, the final boss after... the final boss after you fight everything. You get through all the levels and everything. So, and then you get to the wishing engine. That's really not a spoiler. Of course you're going to get to the wishing engine. Why wouldn't you? It really... So, the wishing engine itself really serves as a building point for in terms of the final boss. However, the final boss is, again, it serves as a guardian role like the Shroom Lord does. However, it's more like a surprise twist. It's a twist. Because you get to the wishing engine going like, okay, we have gone through so much in order to get here, and oh, there's a guardian here. I wasn't expecting that. So that's kind of what the build-up... So you're building up the wishing engine, but you're not building up the boss, which brings in this feeling of just surprise, which is great. Now, Pandemonium 2. 4 bosses. I'm not going to talk about the final boss because we haven't got there yet. But it's definitely a surprise. But anyway, the first boss, Hot Pants. You're going to the rocket and you're getting the rocket, and you are... So, you have an objective, you have a goal. The boss plays more of a gatekeeper role because we don't hear about that boss at all. A lot of these jumps with the jet boots are really kind of annoying. Especially when it's like, if you hesitate, you're gonna die. So, the first boss pretty much serves as the gatekeeper role. Egg. Egg is kind of... At first I thought that Egg really had nothing going for him. He certainly has no build-up, he's just there. However, he serves as... Egg is an opposite to every other boss fought in Pandemonium. He doesn't have build-up. He more serves as the start of what you're going to be doing next. Because after you fight him, you are introduced to the little egg creatures, and with that, you are rescuing the egg creatures, and you killed their king. Like, it's still weak, but it's different. It's certainly different compared to the rest of the bosses. Mr. Schnobelin, you are going through... That saw blade is just so annoying. Mr. Schnobelin, you are going through the industrial area, going through the cooling facility, hate tank, all of that. Fans, everything. So, really, he fits the area, but really, it doesn't feel like he's actually good. Like, he certainly wasn't built up, I don't think. Like, he has a name, so he's special, but how is he special? There's a lot of emptiness in any sort of evidence I could do for in terms of build-up. You're just like, oh, a mech. And of course, in the next level, Kaleidoscope, you're fighting more of him. Like, you're fighting very simple, like, kind of like him. That green part right there is just kind of really... It really annoys me because it feels like you're supposed to be, like, hold up while you're hanging there, because if you don't, you're going to die. I believe you can die if you're in the wrong position. And now we get to the final area. And that was a great jump by me, because now we have to do this section again. And I was right at the checkpoint too. Like, there was a checkpoint right there, and apparently I did not trigger it. So, that was a thing. Now, I will discuss... I'll kind of discuss the final boss, which is going to happen next. Because it probably has the strongest build-up of them all. Of any... It pretty much is kind of like the build-up that the Wishing Engine had in the first game. However, I think the boss here, the final boss, has a slightly stronger build-up. I think that's all I'm going to really say until we actually fight him next... Fight it next video. Whoever this mystery person is, if you haven't figured it out, really, what have you been watching? And that really comes down to my list of what I wanted to talk about in terms of comparing Pandemonium 1 and 2, and you're not going to see that section again, no. However, I will say one thing. Pandemonium 2, what the hell did you do to the shape-shifting abilities? I loved that part of Pandemonium 1. Where did it go? Why did you not have it? And I love that the game just kind of gives you 4 lives in terms of this last area. This can be a bit of an annoyance. You just have to follow the treasure up. Like, it's not hard, but you have to be very precise. Very, 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 very precise. But yeah, I'm going like, where the heck did you put the shape-shifting? I love that. Transforming into a frog, a rhino, dragon. For Pete's sake. No, we gotta catch up to Jorsha. We gotta catch up. I don't know what happened there. I honestly don't know what happened there. Something happened, but I really don't know what. Because, honestly, you're just kind of supposed to fly down there, and apparently I hit a wall. I don't know. And that's a really long fall, too. But yeah, shape-shifting. That's kind of my last aside that I'm going to be doing, and apparently in the jet boots you cannot ledge grab. Very interesting. But yeah, I think that's everything I wanted to get off my chest in terms of this video. Oh, I'm probably going to hear something in the comments. Maybe. I hope I don't. That's what I feel about the Pandemonium series. I'm going to shut up about the Pandemonium series for now. Because there's still a couple more questions that there's still a couple more things that I have to talk about in terms of the last video. And apparently jet boots just kind of disappear off my feet. Alright, let's go. That's... Because, guess what? Zorsha goes up there. And we're at the end of the level. We're at the end. Almost 54 minutes. You have no excuse for not getting 100% treasure at this point. You saw how many times I went back for all the respawning treasure that was in that level. If you did not pay it... So much stuff. So much talking. This is going to be a huge video. But let's see. Let's have an enjoyment of a final run through Border Run. Let's see if I can't actually beat my current record of 90% treasure, which was already hard enough to do. Yeah, this is gonna be fun. It's gonna be so fun. Because you know, this is the final time we're gonna be doing it. Because with a name like the Bitter End, how can you have another level afterwards that isn't boss? Like, sure, it's not like Storm Temple, but Storm Temple's challenges really felt like a final level. And they were a final level. So, yeah, there you go. Oh. So yeah, and of course, if you want to get a high treasure rating, you have to use all 3 tries. I think I've said this before. Because simply, there are plenty of multiple paths that you just have to do. And finally, I get the correct jump in terms of getting that row of treasure, which is definitely going to be helpful in terms of getting a high treasure rating. Oh, where is it? Okay, there it is. It just sped on up. That's good. Alright, final try. I have to get the final amount of treasure that I really need. That's gonna help a lot. I just gotta not screw up. It's really a pain in the butt when you're trying to play Border Run seriously. And there we are! At the end. Let's see what I got. 97%. The best that I could... This is the best I'm possibly ever going to do. You're not getting anything better out of me. I'm done. I am done with Border Run. And the bonus games. Oh... Now I just need to relax. This is me relaxing. This level was arduous. Long. But we're here. The bitter end is past. Which means that we can now continue forward. To where Queen Zorsha just kind of stands there. There's even a voice sample. I kind of like that as she falls into the hole. She has nowhere to hide. We're going after her. With the final boss. You weren't expecting this, though. Rub the Buddha? You probably weren't. But yeah, the final boss. Rub the Buddha. It's not having to do anything with the heart of the core, even though we're there. Got something to do with rubbing a Buddha. Rubbing a Buddha, rubbing a Buddha, rubbing a Buddha. Rubbing a Buddha, rubbing a Buddha, rubbing a Buddha, rubbing a Buddha. See you next time, everyone, for the finale.